Então, com vocês, a palestra The Code Behind the Buyer's Journey, Extending Liferay with Third-Party Integrations. Ryan.
I'm excited to share just a little bit about what we've done on the web team having to do with the buyer's journey. So this will be a little bit in the beginning. We'll talk about what the buyer's journey is, so it'll be a little high level. And then after that, we'll go into some code of what actually it looks like to develop. The main idea is that Liferay is really robust, and we're able to do a lot of different things. And we've been talking a lot already at the conference about digital experience platforms and how to interact with your users and your customers. And so this is just one of the ways that we're doing that. So we'll get started. So the goal is to master the buyer's journey. What we're going to talk about, first we're going to define it, understand what the journey is. Then we're going to talk about how we track it, so what that code looks like in order to track it. And then lastly, how to accelerate, so why it matters and how to get people through that journey. But first, we need to define what our term means. So the buyer's journey is the process that a potential buyer goes through from the point where they first interact with your product or your website to when they become a customer. So if someone, that beginning point doesn't even need to be online. It can be some sort of event that you throw. It could be someone seeing your logo somewhere. Depends on your industry what it will be. But that first point where they make an interaction with your company, they start on a journey, and they're in this buyer's journey all the way to the point of purchase. So that's what we define as this journey. It's obviously very important because that's the goal. We're trying to get people to move as quickly as possible through this process so that we can sell what it is we're trying to sell. And not only that, but that we're able to get them through that process smoothly. We want them to be able to have a good experience with our company, whether it's our website, whether it's whatever services it is, and everyone in the end is happy. So why does this journey matter? Because of this. This probably makes no sense so far, but I'll explain it, don't worry. You've probably heard the idea that content is king. It's a pretty common phrase. Basically, it's the concept that the content that you put on your website is very important. And that's what brings people in, and that's what defines what a good quality brand is. And that's very true, and content is very important. The words that you put up on your site and the content that you have is essential. But if content is king, then context is queen. That means you could have the best content in the world, but if you deliver it at the wrong time to the wrong people, it's useless. So that idea is we need things that are very relevant to our users. In an age where everything is digital and there's so much information everywhere, if your content is not relevant and it's not to the right people, then you are wasting opportunities. So what does the buyer's journey look like? It can look like a lot of different things. The way we define it at Liferay is what I'm going to explain to you. We have 5 stages. The first stage is the awareness stage. So this is basically where the search begins. It's where your prospective customer, they don't know anything about your company. They don't know anything about what you do, but they have a problem, and they're looking for a solution. So the awareness stage, they're trying to figure out what is it that I need and what are the solutions to my problem. After that comes the education stage. So that means I see that there's a potential solution in, for us it'd be people looking for a portal solution or a platform to build their websites on. So they see a potential solution and they're trying to figure out what is Liferay, or what is your company, what is it doing, getting more basic info about it. The next stage is the evaluation stage. So that's going to look like, is this the right fit for us? So they know the basics about your company, and they're evaluating. They're trying to figure out, they're comparing to your competitors, doing those things, trying to figure out exactly what it is that makes sense for them and if it's the right choice. Then after that is the justification stage. So that's when whoever is researching is sold on your product, your company, but they need to justify it to their superiors or the people that are making decisions or the rest of their company. They're trying to make the decision worth it for everybody else. And then the last stage, of course, is purchase. So they come and they decided we're going to buy. That's the point where they purchase and they end the buyer's journey. So those are the stages, and that's what we're trying to help our users go through in order to, conveniently get them through the process as smoothly as possible. So how can we gather the info about the buyer's journey? There are a number of different ways to do that. Just a few examples are by specific page views. We can figure out what assets people are downloading and see what they're interested in, and will tell us where they are in this journey. And we can also tell by form submissions, things like that. There are other ways to figure out, and it'll be different based on your different use cases. But figuring out where they are in the journey is essential, because then you'll know what they need next and how to give them what they need next. So we have our journey again, and an example of some of the things that you'll see in the awareness stage. You might have an event that's like a blog post or a blog view. So we know someone probably Googled something, and maybe they Googled OSGI, and something about Liferay came up, they came to a blog. So we have a blog view here is labeling them as an awareness stage event. We know this person is probably in the awareness stage. And obviously things will aggregate and you'll get a better picture the more information you have. But this can be one example of a way to figure out where they are. Another example would be form submissions. So maybe there's a text spec sheet on our website and we require a form submission to get it. We'll know, they're looking for information about Liferay. That'll give them more info. More examples, in evaluation, they might do the download on our website. They might look into customer testimonials if they're trying to convince their boss to use Liferay. So there's different things, different ways to determine where they are in this phase. But it's all very important that we identify this is important and this process is what we're trying to get people through. And then we can start tracking it. So this is hopefully just to give you a high level of what the code can look like, where the basic areas where you would need to configure in Liferay in order to track these things. And there's probably multiple ways to do it, but this is just the approaches that we've gone. Throughout it, there will be some chunks of code, and I have all of them on my GitHub page, so you don't have to desperately write anything down. There'll be a link at the end, and when we upload the presentations, you'll be able to get all of those on that code. But I'll run through it basically. So how do we track the buyer's journey? The main key is third-party integrations. So there's all sorts of CRMs, different things that you can integrate with Liferay. We use HubSpot right now. We're using a number of these things. We have Salesforce working as well, and Google Analytics. All those things, I'm sure all of you are also using lots of third-party integrations. And they're very useful and very helpful. And the nice thing about Liferay is it can bring all of those things together so you can utilize and use exactly what you need. You may have the question, why use third-party integrations? It is a good question. Sometimes I wish that we could just build everything ourselves because we have complete control and we're able to do everything that we need to do. But that doesn't always work out ideally because, for one, it takes time. So it's hard to manage all of your time. You only have limited resources in a team, whereas you can use something like HubSpot that's already completely built out, and you can use the benefits of those things. So saving time is a good reason. Support and growth, those are full-fledged products on their own, so it can be helpful to use them and be able to use the features that they're coming up with, and then tie that in closely with your Liferay instance or whatever you're using. And then the last reason is probably you already are. There's lots of integrations out there, and I'm sure you're using many of them. So what does the code look like? First, there'll be three parts. They'll show you a little bit of the back-end code, what it looks like, then the front-end code, so how we use it using web content management, and then a little bit of the tracking. So what it looks like to not only receive the data, but also send it back to whatever integration that you're using. So first off is the back-end code. So this would be your custom portlet. So I was trying to come up with an image that represented a back-end portlet, which is surprisingly hard if you've ever tried. But I came up with a wood lathe or a tool. Basically, the portlet is your core. You're basically taking all of the APIs and all the resources and making them easy to use everywhere else. So it's like your base for everything that you need. As you probably know, as you develop portlets all the time. But this is where we're going to set all of our APIs. Whatever service you're using, we can provide all the resources we need so that we can use them in laser steps. So for our example, we have our HubSpot implementation. So they have APIs that we're able to access. And we created a portlet that gives us the ability to, this little snippet is from actually the HS contact impulse. So that's allowing us to get information about a HubSpot contact. So we're able to see what a specific user who's on our site, what they've done, information of forms they've submitted, all those things. So we implement those, and then also things for forms. So we're able to create forms in HubSpot, and then it does all of the workflow, all those things that marketing wants to use HubSpot for, but then we're able to integrate them into Liferay so that we can call and display forms or do whatever we need to, as we'll talk about later. So both of these also have local services, so we can add whatever methods, whatever logic, business logic that you need. The nice part about this is we can also do things that are on top of what your third-party integration allows you to do. So maybe your third-party integration doesn't allow you to do a certain type of manipulation of the data. You can do that in your portlet and then easily create a method and you're able to use it. So it gives you much more power as well as being able to use the resources that you already have. So then we implement them next using the front end. So that's mainly web content management templates. So we use a lot of web content management templates because they allow us to develop quickly. We can use all the resources that we have, and they're very easy to manage, easy to use. You can also do it in a variety of ways. You could use JSPs, put it into the portlet, but this is just the implementation that we have. So I didn't put all the code up here because it would be a lot, and you wouldn't be able to read it anyways. But basically, one of the implementations that we did that we found really useful is HubSpot allows you to embed forms if you want to, but then you have to use the iframe. It's hard to style. It flickers when you load it onto the page. All those things were problems for us in our implementation. So what we did instead is we created a template that we call the HubSpot form generator template. This is a little bit of the code. Basically, it talks to HubSpot and it pulls the specific forms that we want, or the specific form that we define, and then it populates all the fields for us. And then we're able to take that information and display it on load using Portlet, so it's very smooth. It looks completely normal. We have complete control of the HTML and the CSS, all the classes, all of that stuff, so we can make it look exactly like we want it to, not like HubSpot defines it to be. And it also allows us to do things that HubSpot wouldn't offer. So we can have hidden fields that populate based on users' information or based on whether their contact is from a certain country. We can do all sorts of things. An example is we have a country field, and when you select a certain country, we want to show the state field. So dependent form fields are not that hard of a concept, but sometimes it's hard to implement. And when we were building it, HubSpot didn't have anything like that. So we were able to take this template and then do the logic in there so that when you select United States and country, then it'll show a list of the states that's only the United States things. Things that are common, but things that make the user experience much better than if you were selecting a different country and it was not applicable to you and you have a state field that you don't need. So things like that allow you to expand upon the functionality while still having all of the resources that it provides you. Then next, or what we do, so after we've set the base of the portlet, we have all of the tools that we need, and then we implement it on the front end, and we have the displays that we need. But not only that, we can also send the information, and whatever we want to track, we can send those to whatever ways that we want to do that. So just a few examples are using asset info in Liferay, which is very helpful. I'll go into it more later. And then event firing, so like we were talking about blog views, things like that. Whatever events you want to fire, whatever you want to track, you can do those things. And also things like Google Tag Manager, whatever analytics you're using and whatever is useful, you can implement those into your scheme and then push that information to wherever you want it to go. So the first one is the asset info. So if you haven't used it, it's basically you can add metadata to any sort of document type. So for example, we have lots of white papers on liferay.com. We want to be able to categorize them and give them info so that when someone downloads it, we know, oh, this is a technical white paper from the automotive industry, right? So we can know that information that they're somewhat interested in those things because we've tagged those things that way. So it gives you the ability to essentially customize everything that you need, and then we can use that info to send to HubSpot or to send to Salesforce or to define your audience targeting rules. Any of those things can be used so that you can get a better picture of who your users are and what they're doing, and then be able to give them content that they want. Another simple example, this is not complicated at all, but HubSpot has custom events that you can fire. So things that will help you go through the workflow. So the buyer's journey is defined for us in HubSpot so that when a contact does certain things, it moves them through the workflow. So in our templates, for example, like that form generator, we can say if this person has filled out a certain field, then we're going to send this event to HubSpot to help them move through the cycle. You're able to do all those things very easily using it. This is a simple example of just some JavaScript that fires the HubSpot event, and we're able to send that ID, and that'll help move them through the process. Oh, and that's what it looks like in HubSpot. And then Google UTM, Tag Manager. A lot of you are probably using Google Analytics and has lots of helpful things to send and know things even outside of what you can normally know. So, for example, they have their Tag Manager allows you to track like offline touch points based off of like medium and source and those kind of things. And it's built into Google UTM, which is really nice. So you can just add parameters to your URL, and then it'll know, oh, this, it saves it in your cookie saying, oh, this will allow us to know that they came from this event and hit the certain URL. And we can then know about that user where they came from, and that information is very valuable, both in the process and knowing, oh, this event was actually very successful because we were able to see that 50 people from this event became leads eventually. But again, just an example of lots of ways of whatever you need, you can add it on to this using customizations. And that's what a simple GA tracker event looks like. Simple to add. So we have the base and we have the implementation. All that information is important, and the buyer's journey is important. But it's only important if you utilize the information. So if you can track all the info that you want, but it's not going to make any difference unless you're giving them content that helps move them through that journey. So if we know someone's in the awareness stage, we want to move them on into the education stage. So we want to figure out what info they need and what they would be interested in, whether that's certain content or that's certain call to actions. It can look like a lot of different things. But the goal is to give them the best experience that we can give them. So what can we do to help them through this journey? We can give them content that is both simple and also relevant. Those are the two keywords, I think, for just UX in general. There's a lot of data out there, like I said earlier, and people don't really want to read that much, and they don't want to decipher through. You've seen sites with so much info and so many things going on. If the content's not relevant to them, they probably won't stay on your page. They're not going to be able to follow the journey that will help them get to what they want the quickest. So we need to use this buyer's journey and that information that they have in order to further them on into the journey and give them content that ultimately provides a good UX for them in the experience. So first is simple. Simplicity is very important. Basically, we only want content, like the image before, that has the right context. So we want good content, but we want to give it to the right people at the right time. And a way of doing that is cutting out content that's not relevant. So an example of this would be limiting form fields based on the buyer stage. So this is something that we've done on liferay.com. So our default form looks like this. It has 5 fields, if you can see right there. This is our white papers page, I think. So they're downloading a white paper, 5 fields. That's great. But sometimes 5 fields is too much for someone who's just figuring out what Liferay is. If they're in the awareness stage, they're probably not going to fill out this form and download the white paper. So we want to lower the barrier to entry as much as possible. And so what we're able to do is if the asset that we click on is an awareness stage asset, then we're only going to give them 3 fields, right? So that we lower the barrier to entry, and we're just asking them for their first name, last name, and email. So we don't need the other info as much. We just want them to start the process so we can continue to help them go through that. So that helps increase the number of people that are filling out the form, and then it gives people what they want, as well as giving us the information that we need to be able to give them content further that will help them through that journey. And the next is relevant content. So we want content that makes sense for our users and is helpful for them. So an example of this would be using targeted content. Using Liferay's audience targeting app is a great example of we want to give people the ability to know that what they're going to see on your site is what's relevant to them, so that we know before they even know exactly where they want to go, we kind of know the direction that we want them to follow in order to get them where they want, and we can do that by giving them relevant content. So audience targeting, as hopefully you've heard of, is very useful and growing. There's other talks in the symposium about it. I won't talk too much about the details, but basically if you haven't heard about it, it's just a way that we're able to make segments of users and group people together and then give them certain content based on what that is. And you can customize the rules so that it's exactly what you want to give them. So how does it work? Simply, you first create custom rules. So the built-in rules are things like gender, or you can do things like the weather or the time of day. There's lots of built-in rules that you can use. But for our use case of the buyer's journey, we have rules like your industry. So if we find out a user in a certain industry, we can give them certain content. Or if they're a business user, we can give them certain content, whether it's a customized call to action, whether it's different images, things that'll relate more. Or we can do a role based on your buyer's stage. So we can check with HubSpot when someone hits the page, and if they're in the education stage of the buyer's journey, then we want to give them content that's relevant to that stage. So all these things are doable with audience targeting. So after you create your roles, then you create segments of users. So the role, for example, would be we could create the code for a buyer's journey rule, and then we would create a user segment of only the awareness stage people or only the education stage people, and then we'll give them the content that they need, and then you select your web content and display whatever portlet, whatever it is you want. You display that on the page for them, so that everything is personalized, and the experience that you're providing is exactly what they need. This is an example. It's super simple. This is like almost all of the code. These 2 slides are almost all of the code you need to start writing a custom rule in audience targeting. It's very simple. This one I was writing about personas. So figuring out what persona we have them as, and then be able to create a rule so that they're getting content based on their persona, which is very useful. So this allows us to do things like examples of maybe you know that the person is in the tech industry. So we can give them a call to action that is download now or try it in the cloud, and we have a background image of a bunch of people in our office at computers. But it might not be as relevant to a business user, say. So we can give a business user someone on their phone, and the calls to action that we have are request a demo or start your enterprise trial. right? So we're giving them different content, guiding their journey differently based on what we know where they are in the journey. And it gives us, just the ability to give them what they want easily and have that context right. And then other examples are just of images. You can use audience targeting for displaying, this is like a product line idea, and so you have all your different products, but say they want to target towards a female demographic, then you can give them a whole different set of images and of content based on what we know that they want. So that was probably a lot of content and probably hard to understand. I probably talked too fast for you guys. But in summary, if you take anything away, the goal is to identify the journeys that you have. It might not be the buyer's journey for your particular product or your particular use case, but there are journeys, whether it's the customer's journey after, it could be an onboarding journey, it can be a lot of different things, but you're trying to take your users through a specific set of things, so you need to identify those things and figure out what they are. Another point is you can use Liferay to integrate exactly what you need to be able to give people exactly what they want in relation to that journey, solving their problems for them before they even know exactly what it is that they're looking for. And then lastly, all of it comes down to giving them simple and relevant content because we want to help them and accelerate them through that journey, whatever we've defined it as, using the resources that we have. So I have a couple more minutes. I wanted to leave a little bit of time for questions if you had any. So is there any questions?
On liferay.com, are you using those resources?
Yes. So there's probably a few examples that we weren't using, but most of that comes from liferay.com. So we have a few different ways that we are targeting content right now. We haven't fully implemented the audience targeting in all of our cases. So we have some web content templates that do it, some different ways of doing it. But yes, all of that stuff we're doing on Liferay.com, figuring out how to give people the content that they want and developing exactly what is important to them and what content is needed. Because the ideas are great, but then you need a lot more content in order to target it. So you have to think through a lot of the journey more. So we're in the process of figuring out what exactly is key to give them and where to give the content that they need. Well, if you wanted to see any of the code, you can go to my GitHub page, and I just have a few of them posted there. Also, you can feel free to email me. I'd love to answer any questions I can, or you can come talk to me after or around. I'll be around for the rest of the symposium. But hopefully that's helpful for you, and yeah, interesting. So thank you.